Hey everybody, welcome to Equity Guru. I'm Chris Parry, fearless leader, talking on Zoom to our friend Brayden Sutton, BC's own BC Bud expert and connoisseur, guy who has helped countless, I would say, companies either in a small way or a large way over the years. One of the OGs from back in 2014 when cannabis deals were flying thick and fast and nobody could tell who was who and what was what. But a lot of those bodies have floated down the river past you in the time since, man.
This is true, Chris. And thank you for having me. Very true. Some of the pioneers, I think most of them have tapped out at this point. So definitely.
It's to me, this is the fun time, right? This is the bit where everything bottoms out and you look around to see who's left and who's learned lessons and who's picked up assets on the cheap. And I remember back in 2014, 2015 saying, that there was no money to be made in farming. And there was like, I didn't want to be the guy growing coffee beans. I wanted to be Starbucks. And that the only way to really build a brand out there was going to be survival with the rules as they are. You guys have built a brand through exactly that: survival, quality, and sticking it out when others couldn't.
Precisely. The brands are where the values are. You know, Starbucks can go and source beans from anywhere ultimately, and Coca-Cola can bottle anywhere that they want using really a myriad of options to do so. But you're right, it's that trust in that brand that people can resonate with, that familiarity. That's still lacking in the space for sure. And trust. Yeah.
I was just down at a dispensary that will remain unnamed last night, and standing behind somebody who's just like looking at the massive board of different brands and saying, well, look, I have a sore back. Like, what's good for that? And the bud tenders basically saying, well, I can't tell you.
Mhm.
But maybe this thing here is good.
Yeah.
And it's just also like hokey, like realistically, we should be at a place now where there should be like, a red dot for back and a blue dot for anxiety and a green dot for go to sleep and
Yeah.
do you think we're going to get to that place with the rules supposedly in flux right now, or are we just going to get more hand wringing and fucking about on the edges?
I think so. I think we'll get there for sure. I mean, I've said it before, we're just past year 4 of legalization. So we're still very much trailblazing in the true sense of the word, and everything's been fluid and dynamic. And the brands live or die by the recommendation of these bud tenders. And those bud tenders have very little education and very little sort of product knowledge sessions with the brands. So we still have a challenge of data fees, basically, where the big guys with the big budgets can buy shelf space, buy recommendations. Then the consumer has a shitty experience and goes, well, that's what was recommended. And they don't go back to that store. They don't go back to that product. So the whole system, not that it needs an overhaul, but it's like, to use the cheesy expression, we are still in the first inning. People are unfortunately getting bad information, broadly speaking. The indica sativa debate continues to rage on, which is not helpful for anyone trying to treat back ailments or sleep issues. And yeah, we need standardization for sure on many levels, but we just need more widespread education and less. The overreach taking place from the government is not conducive. They're making a ton, and yet they're strangling these farmers, quite
Yeah.
literally. And the retailers. The retailers aren't really loving life as well, but the brands seem to be doing okay in the middle. So yeah, I think it'll come. I have reminded people, and I'll say it again, that when the Volstead Act in 1933 was repealed, alcohol was only illegal for I think 7 or 8 years, and it took a solid decade for a standard legal market to take over again from the gin joints and the rum runners, the Canadian whiskey coming down from the border. So, we are in very early days. It's going to be a couple more years at least of trials and tribulations. But I almost see today as like what we were all seeking in 2014 was an opportunity to invest in this new space. And we're finally, in my view, starting to see that opportunity emerge now, as we head into year 5, where there are reasonable targets, reasonable valuations, reasonable objectives, milestones, a little bit of a clearer picture as to what's going on. So I'm optimistic. I think it was just a function of having the patience for these first 5 years to get through the mud to where the skies finally open up and we're able to kind of have an enjoyable industry.
Well, speaking of skies opening up, BC Bud Corp in the last month and a half has gone from strength to strength on the stock market. Clearly, at the coal face there, you're doing well. The product is getting out. And, for me, the genius of it is the brand doesn't need to be built. You've taken what was the branding of the entire BC weed space for decades and turned it into something that sits on a shelf.
Yeah, and that's a big responsibility, right? We have to check every box thoroughly, make sure we're sourcing the absolute best product from the best genetics, from the best made with love growers, that everything's hand cured, hand dried, hand packaged, small batch. We are there for every single lot. We oversee everything. We ensure that the price points are value, frankly, because we're competing still against a major legacy market. So yeah, thank you, because it's a big responsibility, but we are here to create a generational brand and to try to sort of hold this baton that has been fumbled down the road, so aggressively by so many people. Not to blame anybody, but as a whole, collectively, it was this mania, essentially this .com style irrational exuberance that never really ends well. So here we are in the aftermath, and that's where the Googles and the Ciscos and the Amazons emerge, when all of the early competitors that said they're going to, blow everyone out of the water finally kind of go by the wayside.
So, in order to be that Google of cannabis, there's generally the big growth spurt. I get the sense that your business plan isn't to go out there and scale hard, that it's more to scale responsibly in contrast to what's happened over the past 6 years. Is that accurate?
It's exactly accurate. I think anyone can go. We just had an opportunity of a company in creditor protection doing $1 million a month in sales in Ontario, spending $475K every 30 days in data fees. They were buying that sales. Anyone can go and buy shelf space. When you stop pouring gas on that fire, the demand, it's like a vacuum. It disappears. So we're not trying to be cute. We're trying to prove concept in new jurisdictions. We're trying to be sticky with good retailers. We've touched 500 already, a little more. So get into new areas, have trust, have relationships, belly to belly with the people that are selling it, and continue to get good feedback and continue to grow based on that feedback. Put out products that are genuine value adds and non-redundant offerings. And I think we've done a pretty amazing job so far. Yeah.
How much of your day-to-day is spent going over those sorts of opportunities? Because there's got to be a shit ton of them. Like, it's got to be a target-rich environment out there, but wanting to make sure that you don't just buy someone else's problems is key.
Yeah, so I mean, we have, for transparency, there's a plethora of, call it ROFRs, of opportunities we have to buy amazing businesses, some of which did big valuation raises in 2018. So they're priced right out of the acquisition zone. A lot of them are tainted with a lot of interest-bearing debt. A lot of them have a lot of shareholder fatigue, frankly, guys that just want out. And a lot of them are good little businesses, but they've got 17 bodies losing 60K a month. And we run a pubco with an all-in corporate burn like south of 40,000. So we really have to keep that share structure intact, be very mindful. There's a few opportunities that we're very excited about in the near future. Hopefully we can start to put out some messaging around them. But it is an everyday question. Do we punch down and buy a bunch of these distressed little guys? Do we just keep hammer down and basically build ourselves up to the point where one of the bigger ones can't ignore us? The truth is, we're just trying to build out, without sort of any objective out there other than continue to raise awareness, continue to grow trust, new areas, new offerings, and grow sales at the same time, and frankly have a going concern that retains earnings, God forbid, in a sector where that was never really the primary mission.
It's, as you said, this is the post-bubble reality is, who's got an actual business model and hasn't already pre-saddled themselves with their own noose. There's not that many. But I note that Health Canada is still pounding out the licenses. Do you think that situation is just going to continue to get messy? Or is that really just a form of the micro growers becoming a little area off to the side that isn't in your ballpark?
Yeah, I mean, end of the day, more licenses is overall not a horrible thing. What it is doing is it's taking away any sort of tangible value to a license. So there's micro licenses for sale all over the place where you're paying less than cash. So the license no longer has real monetary value because there's no instant economic feasibility by owning it. So it'll be interesting to see if, if BC goes the way of Quebec, which is a little more protectionist in terms of like keeping Quebec brands there. Alberta does a good job of that as well. I think if BC goes that route, it'll really help insulate some of the guys. Is the sector totally oversaturated? Absolutely, it is, and doubly so because there's such an abundant availability of frankly good but untested and mold riddled and heavy metal riddled black market weed. So it's the work is cut out for the operators. My heart breaks a lot for a lot of the mom and pops that have went all in on a small little standard facility in the Okanagan. There's a ton of them that have no profitability in sight. They don't even know what to do because they can't even sell the facility for what they're into it in machinery costs and equipment.
Right.
So it's an extreme buyer's market, to be blunt. It's similar to the real estate market. The buyers are in the driver's seat. That's great for us. We're a contract manufacturer model. So I shared this before, like our supreme B2B flower cost of a pretty decent flower in the early days was upwards of like $8-7 a gram wholesale. We now have menus coast to coast of $1.50, $1.75 for the best flower you've ever seen.
Wow.
Doesn't bode well for the people that are making the flower, the growers. There's no economic incentive baked into that equation right now. So I am confident that everything is a pendulum effect and that we're at one extreme in the pendulum. And I think it is blue skies ahead. But I think this year in particular, for the people that are relying on manufacturing a product and selling it out at wholesale, they got to really have an edge to even sell, let alone get premium prices for sure.
Yeah. So this is, I mean, I guess for you, it, it's kind of interesting in that the more that oversaturation hits, the perception is going to be from retail. I'm not going to invest in this BC Bud Corp because cannabis is sick. It's a hard business. But meanwhile, you're doubling and doubling and doubling. It's you're not putting out news releases announcing how much runway you have before you have to go out and raise cash. You're not out there you're trying to explain why your latest financing is underwater. You're the exception to a really, really, really large across the board rule. How hard is it for you to get one, that story out, and two, ensure that you don't get sucked down by that falling tide that's killing everybody else?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's I think the daily dilemma we face as an issuer as a public company because when we go to the retail and they go, oh wow, where's your guys' farm? We explain that we're procure. We work primarily with Doonesbury on the flower side for very specific reasons. But at the same time, we can go from shop to shop. We have menu again to purchase anywhere. Our bar is very high, so if we wanted to slow down, we can. If we want to double down, we can. If we want to just go the course, we can. If we want to hunker down and survive a hurricane, we can. And we have a luxury there that I don't think really anybody has in terms of product backing up or a retail store where you have hard fixed costs every month. So we're nimble. We're not top heavy. We're able to ride this thing out. We're able to sort of surf across the top. And frankly, we're supporting and uplifting the industry because our capital is going directly into our vendors and supporting them. Without them, without us, they're genuinely in trouble. Like they have to go out and find another sort of angel to come in and support them and keep their staff going. So we're a value add to the industry. We would like to certainly think we're a value add to the retail stores and certainly the consumer. And we're on the right side of the business. A lot of people aren't familiar with contract manufacturing and how companies like Red Bull have used it so effectively, but there is a very very specific reason when brand building to leverage other people and maintain that optionality right across the table. So it does take some explaining to do. I think if you look at our story and you go totally sector agnostic and you go, look, you got a very, very tight internally funded structure with proven operators with 2 major exits, debt free, cash flowing, growing, relevant guys on the road every day, belly to belly with shops. Does that sound interesting? They go, yeah, it sounds incredible, but it's in cannabis. Oh, okay, geez. Well, isn't cannabis in a downturn? Yes, of course. So
Yeah.
that's the daily opportunity slash dilemma that I think what's happening now, and I'm sitting with a lot of the promoters reaching out, going, man, like you guys have the story, now's the time. And I go, you get it. Like the timing, you make money when you buy, you be greedy when others are fearful. It's
Yep.
been an ancient rule that Buffett has lived by and Benjamin Graham taught very well. So I do like to think of us, as funny as it is, in a speculative market in Canada, that I like to have that value angle. For me, that's always important. But yeah, it's definitely a learning curve. And I started cannabis health in 2004. And to this day, I look back, I was 20 years early. I was trying to educate people on treating physical ailments using various products. And they're going like, oh, this stuff will never be legal. And then by 2014, it's all everyone was talking about. So we
Right.
are early. I'm aware of that. I'm young and I got time to ride it out, as some of my peers have recently tapped out and said they can't do it anymore. So Josh and I are just getting started. We've got Mark Lustig very engaged. We just brought in Doug Johnson, for example, who's the principal of Pathfinder. So we've got three really big whales in this story that are just ready to help supporting. We've been internally supporting that. I think unto itself is unique in this space. I think every pubco, if you don't have management and people close to management supporting it, it's a bad look, to put it bluntly. I think you have to support your company in good times and in bad. So our ability, if we need to self-finance, we can. If we need to, hold here, if we need to get the stock way higher to do a transaction, I think all those things are options that we actually can do. That puts us in a really unique position. I don't think a lot of the peers have the flexibility, particularly when you look like some of my favorite BC-based brands that you are aware of, great companies. The two in particular I'm thinking about, they have $17 million of interest-bearing debt right now on like 30 million market caps that have maybe 20 million, 30 million in assets. Not a great ratio when looking at sustainability over the next 2 years.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm a Moneyball guy, right? Like I like finding riches in the niches. I like being where the market has already passed and found no value. And to me, like you're in the perfect storm. You're able to scale really quickly using your model. There's an abundance of people out there working really hard to grow product that they hope that you would buy from them, and an increasing number of dispensaries that are happy to take the finished product with the brand attached. And then you've got your big boys in your pocket. If an opportunity comes along for you that we just need 5 million to get this thing that's going to make us grow X, you've got the ability to go get it without having to go and throw out a whole ton of stock to make it happen. That's a pretty great situation to be in. And really, the longer it's like that way, the more wins that you knock up, the more you separate from the rest of the pack.
Exactly right. That's just had a conversation this morning with Josh Taylor going, he and I were in this space in BC in 96. I was commercially in this space in 04, 5, and 6, and then following the US pot stock thing in 2010, started in 2008, Supreme 2013. What we are not going to do is hit 2030 and see this sector finally flower and blossom and be like, well, shit, we were there. We had a front row seat. We saw everyone blow their brains out, and then we tapped out. And now it's industry. We are not going to let that happen. We're going to do good by the industry. We're going to take part in it. We're going to be part of the positive side of the industry. So yeah, you're exactly right. I really do believe we've built a good foundation to do that. But again, my eyes are on the 5 year out, where we're going to be with an intact, good, sound, structured vehicle that we can raise money, we can acquire using our shares as currency, we can continue to grow organically. We really have a lot of different sort of doors we can go through, but to have witnessed what you and I have witnessed and to not be part of the good part of the story ain't gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
That's very much our mission. So
moving forward, probably a little further down the line than one can actually predict. But last night on Facebook, I was buying mushroom chocolates. I got in the post some ketamine earlier in the week from a store down on Hastings. Everything is opening up in a pretty major way, to the point where I can buy LSD in a shop front with a big sign on front that says LSD.
Finally.
It-
Yeah. No.
are
Sorry,
we
but
are we
there's
going to get to a place where companies like yourself become not cannabis companies, but more general stimulant companies, venturing out into all these places that are maybe no longer criminalized, but not yet legal? Do we see the same process that got us legal cannabis that's going to get us legal government approved shrooms and ketamine and all the rest?
in short, it's separate for me for sure. I've been a psychonaut since I was a teenager. I have a fond love and appreciation for all of those things you mentioned. I have an initiative in the psilocybin world that I've had for many, many years prior to the shroom boom that took place in the CSE. They are, to me, I guess I would almost kind of state it like this. It's like, if you take cannabis as a wine, you could call them spirits as one cheesy example. So same wheelhouse, yes, very different energy, very different marketplace, very different retail processes, very different production processes, very different user experience and user times and functionality and what it does. So they're all great things. They all need to be. I don't think anything should be illegal, plain and simple. I really don't. I think things need to be regulated, and there needs to be a lot of education, boundaries, and safeguards. The government should not tell us what we put in our body, period. That's an absurd notion in my view. So if there's an opportunity for us to do something in those within this company, we're wide open. We talk daily on all sorts of fascinating ideas, but we're not a Vancouver moment. We're not a lemonade stand. We are a BC-based cannabis brand. So if there's an opportunity to complement that house of brands, to which we have 5 operating brands right now, where we could bring in an amazing chocolate shroom company, absolutely. But it has to be complementary. It has to be the right time, the right method, and it has to be intentional and for the right reasons, and not for a press release hoping to bait and switch a bunch of retail investors. Because what happened with cocaine, I just went, that's everything wrong. If I can be candid, that's everything wrong with the Vancouver scene, is that here's a press release, throw it out, let's see what sticks. Let's create a bunch of bag holders at $1. It's like that infuriates me. It really does. So there needs to be more intention. I understand people want to be on the cutting edge, and that's wonderful. But companies have a big responsibility to approve messaging that goes out, like the media that got picked up on the, not to name the company, approved a lot of that media. So, is that misleading? I don't know, who's to say. It certainly doesn't feel right to me to say, here's an opportunity that just came up for the moment. We don't know where it's going, but let's go ahead and get everyone horny.
Right.
I don't like that at all. So not our vibe. But we are wide open to some pretty cool opportunities. And again, they'd have to be complementary to the overall house of brands. And wide
Well,
open.
you've got the roadmap of what happens when the gates open on these things, right? Shrooms, suddenly people start accepting shroom listings. It all goes to craziness. No one actually does any business, and you've got guys buying Airbnbs in Jamaica and calling it a resort. So I guess steering clear of that first wave, letting everyone make a mess of themselves, and then coming in, picking up the pieces, is already your tried and true model.
It works. I was in an amazing psilocybin lab yesterday, 20 minutes from where I live. Nobody knows about it. It's Health Canada licensed. They are rocking and rolling. The opportunities are all around, but it's still super, super fragmented, much like Cannabis 2013. So the question is, do you want to blow your CapEx, your OpEx, and your share structure to gamble with your company? One has to be very, very cautious and very diligent. So
Sure.
Diligence is what we do. Like truly, I've been a DD guy my whole life. I'm a good bullshit detector, as you are. It's what I love about you. So my finger's on the pulse of it. I have a clinic in Abbotsford already doing Health Canada licensed psilocybin treatment therapy already. So, very much watching the space. The question becomes, when there's financial interest for the capital market, when there's actual tangible reasoning to get involved, i.e. in terms of revenue and a path to a real business model, not just, again, this test the water, that's when you'll get involved from a public point of view. But we're far more concerned with sort of mopping up an industry on its knees, being cannabis. And as focus shifts more and more to ketamine, cocaine, LSD, I honestly think that's even better for us, because it takes a little bit of that light off of the cannabis industry as well, and allows valuations to soften even further for us.
I'm trademarking the pubco name Cocaine Bear because I can see it coming.
What a brave new world, man. Even the fact when that movie came out, even just shedding light on a Schedule One drug like that is interesting to me for sure, as an observer of humanity. To just even sort of give something that much spotlight, I find fascinating, and a whole new generation of young kids going, "Oh, cocaine sounds interesting." So, interesting times for sure. Not
Times. I've got a 17-year-old son, and he's watching his circle of friends has been interesting because when I was his age, we were all out drinking till 2 a.m. every night. They're not afraid of going and having a drink, but it's also really not that interesting to them. No one's a cigarette smoker. They might smoke a bit of weed, but they're more likely to play around with edibles.
yeah,
It's a whole new world out there of the next generation of customer coming through, and what they're really into is a completely different thing from I think even what a lot in the industry realize. Like they're just not out there just getting stoned. They're interested in experiences.
100%. I genuinely think I'm fascinated too. My daughter's 16, my son's 14. Witnessing this generation is mind blowing to me, and in the best way. And I honestly think that this generation will eventually look upon, going to the pub, you and me go crush 4 pints, no problem. I think that'll go the way to this gen, like our aunts and uncles chain smoking Marlboros. I really do. I think that's going to disappear for specifically edibles. I think that's going to sort of tap into that market broadly. I think our generation is going to shift a little bit from polluting ourselves nightly with booze to doing 10 milligrams of a gummy or a vape cart. And I think we're seeing that dramatically, and I think that's an exponential evolution. So yeah, I'm excited as somebody that comes from a long line of over drinkers that never really were served by the devil's brew. Booze is a different energy. It keeps people on the beam. It makes them more aware instead of more numb and less aware. And I think there's such a smart generation coming up. They're so much more advanced than we were. They're really looking at it critically and going, well, the pot makes me think and be more mindful. The booze makes me a sloppy wreck and feels like shit the next day. So I do see booze.
Look, I'm a diabetic, man, so a night on the booze is a problem. But I can get the same effect from a gummy and no hangover. It should have been happening 50 years ago. I mean, let's be honest.
Totally agree. There's a whole generation of people that are hypoglycemic that don't even know, that have a few drinks, their heart rate increases, their blood sugar collapses after, and they feel dead. They feel so lethargic. I don't know why, myself included. Where I finally, when I started monitoring my heart after a couple glasses of wine, going, Jesus Christ, like what am I doing to myself? And have that data, it's hard to ignore. So it's a new era for sure.
Well, for those that are interested in jumping aboard the BC Bud Corp train, BCBC is the ticker symbol. Brayden Sutton is the man. A few other men behind the man. Man, I got to say, like, how much fun must it be sitting down with Lusty, who's done due diligence on must be 500 different weed deals up and down North America. Managed to avoid putting his foot in any mud for the entirety of the building of Origin House, and then flipping it for a billion plus. Like, Jesus Christ, man! Like to have that guy on the end of your phone, not to downplay your own due diligence of doing deals on of a similar number north of the border, but like when I say you guys have put the band back together, you put the Beatles back together. Like this is the only shop, and without blowing any smoke up your ass, I can't think of another shop that has run the rule over so many deals and been so successful as your group. There's no one else out there that I would point to and say, well, also those guys. Like you can take it from the big market cap all the way down. There's anyone who's been successful has almost just fallen ass backwards into it.
I thank you for saying that. You're right. Lustig is a quality human being, and he's a quality focused guy through and through. If things don't make him feel good and look amazing, he doesn't want anything to do with it. He's bugged with the best stuff every day. Like me, he says no to stuff all day. He got involved in one cannabis company, you know, cradle to the grave or womb to tomb, whatever you want to call it. It was a clinic on how to create an amazingly valuable company and exit it for obscene multiple. To be a director even of Cresco Labs, I think it's the second or third biggest MSO. IMC, a big initiative across Israel, Germany, from Cielo through South America. What excites me and why I bring that up is that we are his Canadian call option. We are his Canadian exposure. We are where he's placed his bet. I am his jockey for Canadian cannabis. We actually have the same birthday. So he's my spirit animal and my mentor and a dear friend, and he's just a brilliant guy. And he doesn't miss. He has an eye like myself, like yourself, that somehow can just see things a little more four-dimensionally and very intuitively, and understands when he's got a good operator, someone who's capable, and someone who's able to move the puck into the net, right? So yeah, he's an amazing guy. Definitely an amazing guy.
He's the guy still sitting at the poker table with all the chips.
Yeah, and
It's
humble. Like, he's a genuinely good human being. He's so humble. That's always such a breath of fresh air. I've been told my whole life, people are like, man, you're really humble for what you've done. And I kind of go, well, I haven't done anything yet. I've done quality. I've been around 3 really big unicorn companies, but that was all just practice. Now we're into the real stuff here. So yeah, it's an honor to work with him every day, talk to him every day. He's in my view, he is a living legend in the space without a doubt, and certainly a sought after guy in capital markets. So,
well, let's do it all again. Brayden Sutton from BCBC.C. Thanks, man.
are you going to be Ringo? Are you going to be the
You can see the size of this nose. I'm definitely Ringo.
Well, let's do it, buddy. And thank you for having me. Really appreciate this. Hope we do it again. And I'm always around if anybody has any questions. I'm quite accessible. So
we'll definitely do it again. Thanks, man.
your time. Thanks, Chris. Talk soon.